In a 10 number station. When Fallout 3 first released back in 2008, we were filled with quite a few questions. Will the Queen die on March 19, 2014? Will Britney Spears win an Oscar in 2023? And while these questions may seem random, all signs actually pointed on all fronts. But then, you hear the story of Fallout 3's special radio station. The conspiracy theory site Snopes.com pointed out that a couple of forum posts seemingly showed Fallout 3 predicting the future. Not only the exact date and time of Gary Coleman's death, but the US oil spill that was taking over the news for a few months around the summer of 2010. How did they do this, you ask? Via secret radio transmissions in the game. In-game, the radio station Galaxy News Radio is hosted by a guy called 3Dog. The creepypasta that originated this story follows the protagonist who ends up killing 3Dog. If you do this, he's then replaced on the air by his assistant Margaret. If you then skip past the Galaxy News Radio missions and then destroy Raven Rock, GNR will occasionally turn into a numbers station. These moments supposedly feature the voice actor of 3Dog reading out numbers in a sad sounding voice. These are then followed by a string of Morse code. It predicted the Queen dying in 2014, Britney getting an Oscar, but unless the Queen was replaced by an animatronic in 2014, it seems to be entirely fake, which it is. In at 9, NES Godzilla. NES Godzilla's creepypasta is a very long pasta about, well, NES Godzilla. Originally written by Cosby Dapp on Bogleach, this pasta is known for both its length and for its extremely heavy imagery. It is so long, in fact, that I had to be split into sub-pages on the creepypasta wiki. Unlike other video game creepypastas, the main character actually rationalizes the events in the game. Other creepypastas also use the hyper-realistic elements, but this one mainly uses it just 2 times in the entire story, only using the element in the final creepy world. It doesn't use too many cliche elements, really only one in the ending, but even then it's not overused. The story has a captivating plot, great and spooky villains, and other things that enhance the experience of reading it, which is why it's a classic and favorite to many. But due to its length, I can't really provide a proper synopsis, and instead urge you to read it online for yourself if you have the time, which it's the summer, so you do, okay? You're watching this YouTube video, so yeah, you have the time. It's creepy, it's weird, and it will make you thankful for modern gaming in all the best ways. And at 8, Pokemon Black. Releasing before the main series Pokemon title of the same name, Pokemon Black is the story of an odd bootleg game cartridge the author found at a flea market. The game started with the familiar Nidorino and Gengar intro screen, however, the press start screen had been changed. It said Black version under the Pokemon logo. The game started with Professor Oak's speech, and then it quickly became evident that the game was essentially Pokemon Red version. After selecting your starter though, if you looked at your Pokemon, in addition to Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle, you had another Pokemon called Ghost. The Pokemon was level 1. It had fright of the ghosts they are encountered in Lavender Tower before obtaining the Sylph Scope, and it had one attack, Curse, but not the one you're thinking of. Defending Pokemon were unable to attack Ghost. It would only say that they were too scared to move. And when the move Curse was used in battle, the screen would cut to black. The cry of the defending Pokemon could be heard, but this time it was distorted. And then when everything came back, the defending Pokemon would be gone. If you use this in a battle against a trainer, where the Pokeballs representing their Pokemon would appear in the corner, they would actually have one fewer Pokeball. The implication being that the Pokemon was killed, and it only gets darker from there, okay? There are no Reshurams in this Pokemon creepypasta, so if you want the whole thing, go read it for yourself, because again, it's kind of a longer one. And it's 7, Chica's Party World. After the fall of Freddy Fazbears, the IP to the characters were still intact, so an individual named Riley bought the rights to Chica, the yellow bird with her signature cupcake. They opened a new pizzeria with new branding, but still in the same building. It had all the amenities that one needed after all. We would regularly have officers at the location, constantly checking to make sure that Afton never showed his face, and he never did. But then we noticed neither did the owner. After talking to some of the employees while off duty, they had never met the owner either. The man was said to only arrive after the place had closed and everyone had left to take the earnings from the register. We ran the owner's name against our database, and there was nobody in the city with the name Riley Tremakovic. So after obtaining a warrant, we discovered what we had feared the most. Riley was an alias for one William Joel Afton, who, after running this business under the alias, had used it to kill 15 more kids in the span of 1 week. All after hours, and all after following a pink Chica around back after they had gotten home. Suspect was arrested at 11:36 p.m. on Tuesday, June 18, 1996 by arresting Officer William Clayton. And at 6, Super Mario 666. The writer of this story says that recently a home in their neighborhood had mysteriously been destroyed. The newspaper says that it was an explosion started from a gas leak in the house, but who's to say? Unfortunately, no one in the home survived, but one day a friend came to his house rushing over, saying that he had found something important. important. His friend was nearly out of breath from sprinting all the way to his house, but he had found something in the rubble of the home. It was a copy of Super Mario 64. Why you were going around in the rubble of a exploded house beats me, but you know, creepypasta. Although the numbers on the cartridge weren't 64, instead it was 666. They immediately put the game in and started playing, and the boys were greeted with a sign-in post that read, "King Babam is dead. Now his legion of followers are lost without purpose. They can only do what they know best." That's when they began to hear this ticking noise, and no, not a mysterious one. As a Babam walked onto the screen, its eyes were red and it was staring directly at the two boys. The sound began to pick up speed. Tick, 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 tick. That's when they realized that the game was responsible for that mysterious explosion. They sprinted out of the house only for moments later to have history repeat itself, and now his home had as well erupted into flames. Firefighters sorted through the rubble, but the only thing they found was a still intact Super Mario 666.
Number 5. Alive. Joey's shrine was almost complete. He'd built it around a drawing he once found. It had slipped out of some unlucky artist's portfolio as he was running for the train. Joey thought the drawing had promise, style, something unique about it. It was a unique looking character with a mischievous grin. He brought it with him everywhere he went, and everywhere he went he found success. With each new accomplishment he gazed on the drawing, thinking of it as lucky, and it always seemed to wink back at him. The head of the animation studio, now his shrine to it was almost complete, with a drawing in a gilded frame on the wall of his office. Every now and then it asked something of him, whispering to him while he whistled and worked away. Today it only demanded something small in comparison to other prior requests. A sacrifice. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and if you want more creepypastas lists, who doesn't like more creepypastas, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up.
And at 4, Polybius. This story tells of an unheard new arcade game appearing in several suburbs in Portland, Oregon in 1981. This would have been something of a rarity at the time, and the game is described as proving popular to the point of addiction, with lines forming around the machines often resulting in fights over who would play next. I mean, if you're in a line, I don't know why you're fighting over who gets to play next, but that's aside the point. The legend describes how the machines were visited by men in black who collected unknown data from the machines, allegedly testing responses to the game's psychoactive effects. Players supposedly suffered from a series of unpleasant side effects including seizures, amnesia, insomnia, night terrors, and hallucinations after playing the game, and approximately 1 month after its supposed release in 1981, Polybius is said to have disappeared without a trace. So good luck finding one, because you can, because it disappeared without a trace, and it's not real.
Number 3. Avatar Swap. I was obsessed with making my avatar appear like me, driven to try and make it look as realistic as possible, and match me and my style as much as it possibly could. Each month I changed it and spent hours on editing and creation, weighing every choice carefully. I learned of a service where you could send in pictures of yourself and they would custom make an avatar model for you to use in game. I'd never heard of it before, but it looked legit, so I decided to give it a try. A week passed and I finally received a USB key in the mail, with instructions to insert it into my Xbox to have the custom avatar uploaded. As I plugged it into the Xbox, I felt an electric shock shoot up my arm. Instinctively, I went to pull my hand back, but I found it was stuck in the Xbox somehow, being sucked into the console. I now live here as my avatar, finally the perfect match to my likeness because I am myself. Something stares back at me in my place from the couch, playing games every now and then, but whatever it is not me. It can't be.
But ultimately in at number 2, Herobrine. It's Herobrine. You know what this is, okay? I'd recently spawned in a new world in single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor, but it wasn't a cow. Looking back at me was another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to make sure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He looked at me and then quickly ran into the fog. I continued on with the game as I expanded the world, and I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generation to make. 2x2 tunnels, small perfect pyramids made of sand in the ocean, and grooves of trees with all of their leaves removed. I would constantly think that I saw the other player in the fog, but whenever I looked in that direction, he wouldn't be there. I saved the map and went on the forums to ask if anyone had found this mysterious player. I received a PM from the username Herobrine containing one word: stop. About a month had passed until I heard from someone again, and it was revealed to be the brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother, and his only response was I did, but he's no longer with us. Finally, in at number 1, Sonic.exe. The original Sonic.exe story centers around Tom, a young man who was a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, especially the older games. He claimed that he had not played any glitchy or hacked games before, though he admitted that he didn't want to after an experience he had. He then proceeded to recount this experience, explaining how he received a CD and an accompanying letter from his friend Kyle, begging him to destroy the disc before it was too late and to not play the game, but ignoring his friend's warnings, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have a story. Tom played the game and began to encounter odd, somewhat disturbing phenomena, from a title card featuring an evil-looking Sonic with bloody eyes and glowing pupils with a wide smile, to the presence of a file select screen similar to that of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. As he picked the only available character Tails and began the first stage, titled Hill Act 1, Tom continued to find more evidence that there was something wrong with the game, namely, copious amounts of dead animals, which, yeah, not normal in a Sonic game. They were all murdered in gruesome ways, and eventually he encountered Sonic at the end of the level, standing completely still and with his eyes closed. And I'm sure you can see where this is going. Fun fact, we actually played the game version of this on the channel way back in 2019, and I actually filmed a segment for that video, which would have been my first video on this channel, but I didn't react well to the game. I mean, I wasn't really all that scared and basically got the same ending as everyone else. And at 10, Henry. My name is Henry, and I recently went into business with a longtime friend named William. We bought the rights to this character named Fredbear and rebranded into a pizzeria with arcade games and singing animatronics. He is the business end and I am the creative end. My creations were supposed to help kids, but now they've seemingly been warped, molded into something else entirely. The police said that they can't help me, but I know what Afton has been doing. He's trying to take children away from their families, but not before doing unspeakable things. I tried to buy him out yesterday, used the shotgun clause in our contract, but he was able to outbid me. Now he owns the company and I'm stuck here with nothing. My daughter keeps trying to go, saying even if I don't own the company, she still loves what I made. But I know what he will do if he finds her. I've banned her from going, but still added a secret part to her favorite bracelet. That makes sure our security protocols focus on her. It sounds selfish, I know, but wouldn't you do anything to save your kid? Why is there someone knocking? This isn't good. We need to leave. Where's my daughter? What the hell is at my door? And at 9, Chuck E. Cheese. When I was in college, I was a night guard at Chuck E. Cheese. Well, night guard is sort of a loose term here. After they closed, I would have to stick around for a few hours and make sure no kid was hiding in the store, or that the animatronics were turned off. Well, one night, I swear to God, it was almost exactly like these damn games everyone's been freaking out about. One summer night, it was close to the end of my shift, which at that point was 3 a.m. I was waiting in the security room with the cameras on, with YouTube on my phone, watching the latest videos from my favorite YouTubers, when all of a sudden I see movement on the cameras. I look up and I see one of the animatronics dancing. I don't know how it got turned on, but I went to go turn it off and it was gone. While I was out there, another one started dancing, but then it put its hands on the banister that the robots sit behind. Then the curtain closed and I heard nothing. I went to report it to my manager, but my watch fell off as the time hit 3 and I just left it alone. When I got back the next day, the robot was back. I still don't know what I saw that night, but I've never worked another security job again. And it ate Crying Child. I loved Freddy Fazbears as a kid. I would go there every weekend with my friends. Our parents would talk over a few beers and everyone was happy. We would play games, say hi to Freddy and the gang, and have the time of our lives dancing with everyone. Until November of 1996, when our lives got changed forever. We were playing skee-ball until I had to go to the bathroom. When I got back, my friends weren't there, and their tickets were hanging out in the machine. I grabbed them and went back to our parents, who said that they had gone to the bathroom, which wasn't true because I was just in there. I start heading over to see if they were really in there, but as I walk past the dark room, I see someone with them. He was tall, he looked old and had a purple shirt on. Awkward. He put a head on one of them and then turned around and saw me. He started towards the door, but then I ran back to my parents. He came out and I pointed at him, saying that he had my friends. My parents just said it was a good time to go and took me home. My friends were never found. Nobody believes me. They say that I was only a kid then, but it's been over 20 years and they never looked where I told them. Idiots. All of them. And at 7, the Tails doll. The Tails doll is the titular main antagonist of various creepypasta stories of the same name, as well as the urban legend that is also the Tails doll. It is a demonic doll designed in the form of Miles Tails Prower from the Sonic series, who seeks to defeat him. However, in the creepypasta stories, he's nothing more than a homicidal maniac who seeks to kill anyone who performs the Tails doll curse. I meant to say performs, but I don't care at this point. There is no definitive history to the Tails doll creepypasta, the most popular one being the Tails doll curse created by Rebecca G. A man came home from work with a gift for his son. He had picked up a new video game for him called Sonic R. It was a racing game, and when he gave it to his son as the gift, he was so excited to get it and actually to play it right away. Well, the son was, not the dad. That night though, he played the game with his son and they had a great time. A couple of days later, the boy was almost finished with the game, but he was told that it was time for bed. At around 2 a.m. though, father woke up and heard thumps on his door. He assumed it was his son getting up and asking him for something, so he told the boy to go back to bed. The thumping kept happening though, and eventually he saw Tails popping his head up constantly, every time. He got out of bed and slowly opened the door, and then he heard someone say very softly, "You are coming with me forever." And it was actually the doll. An evil, blood-covered, possessed little doll. Yeah, and it was the doll from Sonic R. It had to be. Of course it was going to be. Come on, we know how these work. And at 6, Springtrap.exe. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 just came out. I've been a fan of the series since the beginning, especially after everyone was making theories about the story. I wanted to play 3 when it came out, but I never really had money. I was looking for the game online, but all I could get was links to buy it. And the only links I were finding were to a website called Pirate Bay that was using a separate program. I tried installing the program to get the game and it worked for a while, but instead of being called Five Nights 3, it was called Springtrap. I guess it was to make things sneakier maybe? I loaded the game when it was installed, but this wasn't a Five Nights game. The game only had Springtrap on the menu, and I knew who he was because of all the theories online, and he was staring at me. But his eyes always followed me. Not my cursor, but me. I loaded the game and I was a security guard, but instead of being in the security room, I was in the main door to the place. Text faded onto the screen saying escape, and I heard things fall behind me. I turned around and nothing was there. I tried opening the door, but the door was locked and I needed to find the key. I went to the first room I saw and it was a closet. There was nothing in there, but as I turned to leave, Springtrap was standing behind me. He stared at me for what felt like forever before walking out of sight. I exited the room and checked the others and there was no key at all. As I headed back to the main room, Springtrap was there at the door, standing in front of it with a key around his neck. He takes it off and gives it to me. I open the door and as I walk out, he says, "I always come back." Then I get pulled back inside, the door slams, and Springtrap starts tearing me to shreds. The game deleted itself off my computer after that, and I haven't looked for it since. It's understandable.
Number 5, Project Console. I had signed up for a job working in games. I'd loved video games ever since I was young, so this was a dream job. This job was to help advance new technology that changed the way we could experience, interact with, and view games. It was all very mysterious as to how this tech company planned to do that, but they promised they were working towards an entirely new, immersive experience in the employment ad that I had read. So I eagerly applied. I made it through all the interview rounds and it was down to myself and another candidate. In the end, I was chosen because my voice was more soothing and would make people feel more at ease, they said, when being integrated into this new gaming experience. We began work on the project and it was said that I would become the guide for those gamers joining this new revolutionary wave of gameplay. I was sent to a room down the hall to get started on my first day. When I entered, it was pitch black. I stumbled around for a light and heard someone tell me to stand still. I heard a shuffling and then I felt a sharp pain in my side. "Your life will help to tether the others," a voice said from the dark. I felt down to where the pain was in my side and felt a knife handle sticking out of it. I now reside within a console, able to connect to people via this technology. Soon, against my will, others will join me on this new plane of existence.
And at 4, Sound Disc. I finished watching all the theories on FNaF. They were so interesting, and I loved the thought behind the sound discs. See, for the past few nights I've been seeing things. Seeing things like my golden Freddy plushie walking and my stuffed Bonnie jumping on my bed. But ever since seeing that, I'm worried that it will get worse. Update, I was right. Last night I had some of the worst dreams imaginable. The monsters were coming after me. It was almost exactly like the FNaF 4 gameplay. But only in my house. I don't know what to do. I don't think I can handle it anymore. I might just give up.
Number 3, Stuck. Do you ever get that sense that you're not alone in a room when you know you are? Like a pair of eyes are following you no matter what, and you can't escape them no matter where you go? I do sometimes. Lately my pipes have been creaking something awful. I called a plumber to take a look, but they aren't supposed to come for another week. I just can't shake the feeling that something is wrong with this place. Whenever I turn off the tap, it's almost like I can still hear it running for a few seconds after I've closed it. What is that sound? Running water? A whisper? Today I decided to put my ear closer to the drain to try and see what it sounded like. Now I can't sleep because of it. All I heard was a little voice, I swear, coming up from the drain pipe. It whispered, "I'm stuck."
Penultimately, in at number 2, Michael. I know my father's secret. My name is Michael. You may know my father, William. I saw him carrying bags home after work, but when I looked inside, I saw people. People who I once called my friends and were cold, pale, and lifeless in a bag being carried by my father. When I confronted him, he told me to stay out of it, but I am not letting this happen. I know that my sister died, but she wouldn't want this. He asked me why I couldn't get over it, and obviously because I can't get the image out of my head. Carrying bodies of dead kids? I don't even know how long you've been doing this. He didn't like it when I said that. He took one of my arms and one of his robots and hit me. Everything went dark, but I could still hear him. He said he wanted to put me back together, whatever that means. And finally, in at number 1, Juniors. I was with a few of my buddies grabbing some drinks at Juniors, a bar down the block from me. The bouncer called him William and tells him that he knows he's not allowed in. We have no idea why, and we've been coming here for the past few years, and we have never heard the mention of anyone named William. Then the guy starts getting aggressive, yelling and even shoving the bouncer. At least it explains why this bar has a bouncer. It's for this guy. All of a sudden he falls to the floor, and this William guy comes strolling in with a shirt now tinted red. I start freaking out, but my friends are telling me to stay calm. William then yells for someone named Henry, to which the guy behind me stands up. "What do you want, William?" William yelled that he snitched and started walking towards us. My friends and I got ready to stand up, and Henry pushes my shoulder back down, telling us to stay seated. "You were killing kids, William," Henry told him quietly, but my friends and I heard him. William smiled and said if that's how you see it before walking away. But before closing the door, he leaned back in and shouted, "Call your daughter. Tell her I say hi," before walking outside and waiting at his car. Henry does, and he doesn't get an answer. That's when my friends and I spring into action. We run outside and see a clown standing in front of us. She looks shiny and has orange pigtails and was way taller than any of us. I heard the sound of metal on metal, but then everything went black.
Number 10, Eyes That Follow. Has anyone else had this experience playing Bendy in the ink machine? I was playing one time, and I swear the eyes on the cardboard cutouts of Bendy were moving and were following me. At first I thought this was just something weird that happened in game, until I noticed that when I got up to get a drink, the eyes continued to move and follow me, myself, not just the character in game, as I moved around my living room. I instantly became freaked out, especially as I had no VR equipment hooked up and not even my camera plugged in, so how could it have known where I was? I became too creeped out and haven't gone back since. So if this is just a weird game feature with tech that I don't understand, please let me know. Number 9, One with the Ink. I sit on the page, staring outward. Does anyone know that in creating this drawing, I trapped myself? That I'm forever stuck on this single, otherwise blank page of paper? I didn't know about the ink. I didn't know that it would keep me trapped here. I cannot get off the page, but I can draw more. Is that what he wanted? A tethered artist unable to escape, only able to work endlessly forever? And what will happen when the page is full? Number 8, You Little Devil You. There is a famous animation studio that I used to work for. I can't say their name here because, well, I don't want to get sued, but I will say that you probably know them and they are beloved the world over. What you don't know about them is the characters and animations that they were never able to release to the public. There were works created by the studio for a line of cartoons that were intended originally for adults, but ended up being abandoned. Some say it's because they simply wanted to keep their market family friendly, but I know the truth. It's really because the people who worked on them back in the day were part of a cult, and hidden within the animations was subliminal messaging, meant to brainwash whoever watched it into joining them and becoming a sacrifice to the dark deities they worshipped. 2 people at the studio died as a result of seeing these cartoons, and after that they they were locked away forever, never to be seen again. I almost experienced this coercion myself when I stumbled upon a little clip of an animation featuring a catchy song called You Little Devil You, where a little devil with pointed ears shaped like horns dances around almost hypnotically. Number 7. The Red Ring of Death. I had always heard people complain about the Red Ring of Death. Their 360s died because they basically overheated or were too old and dusty, but I never thought much about why the name was chosen. Obviously the power button on your Xbox goes red, with the Red Ring of Death being the ring that appears on it. So it made sense. Not much to think about there. But the origin story of the Red Ring is actually much darker than that. I heard from a friend of mine that the real story actually had to be covered up, and that the glitch to your Xbox was even possibly introduced because of this original true story. It's a cover-up basically that was used to deflect from the truth. Apparently someone became so addicted to playing their Xbox 360 when it first came out that all they did was play games day in, day out, and they lost their mind as a result. They began carving the letter X into themselves all over and worshipping their Xbox as though it were a god. Eventually they kidnapped people and brought them home to sacrifice them to the console, strangling them to death with twine, leaving a thin red line around their neck. When this homicidal maniac was found out, it was referred to as the Red Ring of Death case because of how they'd murdered their victims. But all of that was hidden, and the glitch that destroyed your system was actually introduced so that the phrase could take on a new, much less sinister, but still annoying meaning. Number 6. Beside You. My friend Scott was playing Bendy in the ink machine and he complained about something really weird. Something I can hardly believe happened. I mean, I wouldn't believe it if he didn't manage to record it happening. While he was playing, there was a voice that he heard whispering in the background. He wasn't on Discord with anyone, and at first he just thought it was part of the game, until the voice started calling his name. It got really weird when he heard it coming from one specific side of his headphones, but when he moved around in the game he couldn't find the source of it. He turned his head to look around himself in the room, looking towards the side the voice was coming from through his headphones. He had the lights off, but apparently in the corner of the room he saw a large, dark figure. Scott grabbed his phone, intending to shine a light on the shadow to see what it was, just as it began to charge towards him. But before it reached him, he flipped on his flashlight and it seemingly vanished. All the audio from the game was recorded and it sounds pretty disturbing. If you're thinking Scott is just messing with me, he didn't have a mic hooked up as he doesn't currently own a mic for his PC.
Halfway through into number 5, Lavender Town Syndrome. The Lavender Town Syndrome was a peak in suicides and the illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12 shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back on February 27th in 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens could hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone though, at least 200 people supposedly committed suicide, and many more had developed illnesses and afflictions. The people who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights, but those who did not act irrationally complained of severe headaches after listening to the theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released, or so it's said. After the Lavender Town incident, the programmers had to fix Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and children were no longer affected by it. Although, of course, it's a creepypasta, this never happened, so yeah.
Number 4. Bath Time with Bendy. After a hard day of work, I always enjoy a nice long bath. I work outside doing manual labor and the day had been hot and hard. I had been painting a house and was covered head to toe in paint. As I slipped into the warm, soapy water and sunk beneath the surface, I let out an audible sigh. Perfect, I thought. I let my face slip below the surface, submerging myself fully for a moment, but then I noticed with my eyelids shut the room seemed to get dark suddenly. I resurfaced and went to rub the water and soap from my eyes, opening them, but when I did it stung badly and I couldn't see. The water suddenly felt cold. How long had I been in the tub, I wondered. I stumbled out of the tub, still rubbing my eyes furiously, and went to the wall to flip the light switch, but the wall was covered in something wet, cold, and slippery. So was the floor, I noticed. Had the bathwater somehow flooded the bathroom? But the tap was off. Finally, I was able to open my eyes, though they still stung a bit. I blinked through the wispy darkness to see that the whole room was slick with black ink.
Getting close to the end at number 3, Help Wanted. My local Chuck E. Cheese had a help wanted sign in the window, so I figured I would try applying since I've played all the Five Nights games. When I brought it up at the interview, the manager hired me on the spot. I thought it was a joke, but later on I figured out why. My first night was exactly like the Five Nights games. Some recorded messages teaching me about the job, and since the managing security guard was on maternity leave. And it had a similar setup to the games. Nothing happened until the next night, where animatronics started playing songs and dancing. The next night, one of them was missing, even though it was there earlier in the day, and I just thought it was my mind playing tricks, but I found it in the kitchen. My final night was where it got bad. All of the animatronics were gone, and I saw them walking on the security camera. They were walking towards me. So the only thing I thought to do was jump out of the window and never go back. The place was shut down a week later for foul odors and ooze coming out of the robots.
Number 2. Love requires sacrifice. I stare at the inky reflection in the mirror. It is me and not me. It is a happier version of myself. I know that he will come and welcome me into his loving embrace, and I accept him into myself. I smile back at the inky being that blinks and grins. Do you love me? It asks. I do, I respond back, hesitantly. It notices my hesitance. It doesn't like that. It frowns and the mirror begins to crack outwards, shards of it falling to the floor around me. What will you give me? I pick up a sharp mirror shard, squeezing it so tightly it cuts into my flesh. I hold it up to the mirror and then point it toward myself. I take a deep breath and respond with a dark calmness. Everything. The eyes of the reflection shine brightly in the mirror as it begins to laugh with delight. Love requires sacrifice. Number 1. Hide and seek. Dee had an imaginary friend named Ben who loved to play hide and seek. One day the two of them were playing when Dee noticed that she couldn't find Ben anywhere in her house. A voice from outside seemed to call her. Dee, it seemed to say, come and find me. I'm out here. That was against the rules, Dee knew. But she also acknowledged that her friend, not being entirely real, meant that maybe rules didn't apply to them? Despite what she had been told by her parents, she went out the front door and followed Ben's voice. She could see their curved shape climbing up the drain pipe. Dee shouted, I found you, and followed after them. Before she knew it, she was up on the roof. Ben asked Dee, do you want to play forever? Do you want to become one? And Dee, without thinking, nodded and smiled. Then you have to catch me, Ben said, and he jumped. Dee followed him. They would be together forever and become known as the whimsical character Bendy, inspiring a child whose imaginary friend they became to one day draw them. Number 10. An invitation. I don't play online anymore, this is why. I had received an invite from a friend to join their party. They were about to jump into a game of Call of Duty online and wanted me to join. I accepted the request, but when I got to the party I realized I didn't recognize anyone there. It was then I noticed the name of the person who had invited me was similar to my friends, but not quite the same. In the place of the E in their name there was a 3, and I had somehow misread that when I accepted. Hello? I spoke into the mic. I think I joined by mistake? Sorry. Then I noticed that all the names, while different, were all similar actually to close friends of mine that I usually played with online. I heard heavy breathing coming from the mic of the person who had invited me, and then all the users also joined in, breathing heavily into their microphones as well. They began to chant, and then a sharp and loud screech was heard in my headset. I went to exit, but before I could, my Xbox crashed. Number 9. The glitch. Any games with ghosts James was a fan of. He loved horror games. The more scary, the better. He had played tons of different ones and had a strong collection of spooktacular games on his Xbox. One night he was playing Blair Witch when it glitched out on him, not giving him any options for what to do next. He couldn't find himself able to interact with anything in the game. He tried to persevere but was ultimately attacked by the trees and died because he couldn't fight. He decided to give up for the night and went to bed, but as he pulled back the covers, he noticed a little white corner of a Polaroid picture tucked under his sheet. He grabbed it, flipped it over, and saw himself standing as he was in front of the bed, but from behind. On the back of the picture, it read James. His eyes widened, and he spun around in circles, looking all around him. It was just like in the game. Hello? He called out. If anyone's here, leave now, I'm calling the police. He reached over to grab his phone charging on the bedside table, but before he could dial 911, he noticed a red light emanating from beneath his closet. Unable to resist, he walked over to the door and slowly opened it. As though he were in a daze, he stepped into the closet and became lost in the wilderness, voices whispering eternally in his head. Number 8. You have been warned. If you find a game on your doorstop for the Xbox, do not play it. Do not take it in. Beware. I received a game mysteriously this way and put it in my Xbox only to find that the game seemed to take place in our own world and predicted awful things happening such as murders, natural disasters, and personal tragedies in my own life. At first I thought it was cool, some sort of custom experience game that somehow used your location and a few details you provided to create a world almost similar to your own but darker. But then I realized this game was something more. It made bad things happen, awful things. I tried to destroy it, but everything has since only gotten worse. I have no home now and I live on the street. I believe because I took in this game. Any game you find that is unnamed should not be played. You have been warned. Number 7. Fresh ink. On her days off from school when her dad still had to work, Joanne would come with him. She loved coming to the studio. It always smelled like fresh ink and happiness there. Everyone smiled and she got to play with all the Bendy toys while her father worked. Joanne said hi to everyone, then decided to do some exploring before heading to their room filled with Bendy merchandise and toys, where she'd usually play. However, as she wandered, she noticed Bendy at the end of the hall, or a Bendy cutout at least, waving her over to come play. She rubbed her eyes. She couldn't believe it. Was this really happening? She ran after Bendy down and down deeper into the studio until she ended up in a dim lit corridor. She couldn't see Bendy anymore, and when she went back to try and find her way out, she noticed every doorway was boarded up. She screamed for help, but the loud ink machine drowned out her screams. When the room was entered years later, the new owner of the building would notice a painting on the wall with a little girl dancing hand in hand with Bendy. The girl looked just like the one in the paper who had been reported missing years before. Number 6. Join us. I bought a refurbished Xbox online, not wanting to spend all the money for something new. A friend of mine had done this and I found the console they owned was completely fine, so I thought I'd try out the whole refurbished thing for myself. I saved a good amount of money on my purchase, so I was pretty happy about that, and when I went to play on the console, everything seemed normal. Success, I thought. But then a while later, I decided to revisit one of my favorite games, Skyrim. I'd played it many times before and loved it, but there was something different about this playthrough. One of the NPCs I saw looked just like me. I shrugged it off as a coincidence until I found a town where every NPC looked just like me. It was a whole town filled with avatars that looked identical to me. Freaked out, I went to leave the town, considering I should maybe stop playing. But before I could get out of there, they all started to shout and point at me. "Don't leave! You can't! Join us!" They continued to all shout before attacking me.
Halfway through into number 5, it's me. I am not Chica, I am not Freddy, I am your worst nightmare, hello it's me. I am not Foxy, I am not Bonnie, I am coming for you, hello it's me. The faster you go, the louder I shriek, that's how you know it's me. And when you feel cold and only see gold, then you'll know I have your soul.
Number 4. Be careful what you wish for. Online FPSs had always been my thing, but I was new to Battle Royale style games like Fortnite. Still, I had heard the game was awesome and I loved playing online, so I thought I would try it out on my Xbox. However, it felt like the learning curve was pretty steep when I was playing, as I was quite new to the game. I wasn't very good at building and I didn't really know where was the best place to drop to start. After playing for a few hours, I was getting frustrated by the fact that I wasn't seeing much improvement in my play. "I wish I could just get better," I exclaimed aloud. "Why is this so hard?" Still, I persevered. In the next match I played, I finally felt like I was finding my stride and found myself on a hot streak. The match ended up coming down to me and one other player, and I was confident I was going to win. However, I experienced some lag that cost me the match. Frustrated, I tossed my controller down and I cursed, "Not fair! I wish they had died. I was so close to winning." Just then I heard something in my headset. "Granted," a gravelly voice whispered. I watched as the other player's avatar, who was cheering with celebration, was decapitated by a spinning scythe coming onto the screen. The next day, I heard in the news about a young gamer who had been playing Fortnite and suddenly collapsed and died.
And at 3, Ben drowned. I recently moved into my dorm room starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in the last decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can't be choosers, I was definitely over it. That weekend I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals from ignorant parents. Before I left though, one last house caught my attention. I still have no idea why it did. I mean, there were no cars and there was only one table set up with random junk on it, but something sort of drew me there. I asked this man if he sold any video games, and he assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and then turned to head back into the garage. I looked around for a little while, and then I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length from me, smiling. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously as he handed me an old Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was the standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. He then gave it to me for free, and there was only one save file simply named Ben. I felt bad for the man who was obviously a grandparent and going through a loss, but this story is way more sinister than that. And if you want to know more, you'll have to read it for yourself if you don't know it already, because again, it's long as hell.
Number 2. Life's Little Achievements. Sims 4 has always been one of my favorite games. I have it for every platform imaginable. I play it on my phone, my Xbox, my PC. I just can't get enough. My parents even worried for a while that I cared more about my Sims' lives than my own. But as time went on, I found it only inspired me to be more diligent with my own growth and progress in real life. Each task completed, each moment lived, each memory captured in my life felt like I was making progress, like a little milestone or achievement in the Sims game. This satisfaction meant I was playing less and less as life became more fun and Sims felt more like a distraction from it. It was like life was a game, a really fun game. I had just gotten a promotion at work, and to celebrate, one of my friends invited me over to her place for a pool party. I brought my swimsuit and some hot dog buns as we were going to be barbecuing as well. We all jumped in the pool, swimming around, and just relaxing. It was nice, until something shifted. The pool felt deeper. A sense of panic rose up in me. I looked around. There was no way out. The stairs we'd come in on were gone. The ladder and diving board were also gone, and the pool had become deeper. It was impossible to reach a ledge and climb out. After hours, I became exhausted, too tired and stressed to continue. I felt myself finally slip beneath the surface. Number 1. Xbox Live. This creepypasta comes to us from the Silicon Lemming, and oh my goodness, is it a good one. I'm so excited to share it with you. I'm writing this as I sit in front of my TV. My avatar stares back at me waving. A week ago I was playing on my Xbox when I was invited to a party by someone whose username didn't pop up. Foolishly, I accepted, only to discover that I was the only other person in the chat. That is, there was a duplicate of me. I thought it was a glitch until I heard my own voice echo back to me in a different tone, eventually even speaking different words and threatening to come after me. Saying words that I hadn't said, I was of course disturbed by the presence of this other voice and ended up logging off. I took a break but eventually returned to play. However, after looking away from the screen momentarily, when I looked back, I saw my avatar appearing far closer than normal up on the monitor. Its hands were held up to the screen as though it was peering out at me. As I locked eyes with the avatar, it pointed at me before dragging its finger across its throat. I was understandably terrified, and it was then that my Xbox began to smoke and melt. I wasn't able to turn it back on and had to send it over for repairs. I waited to plug it back in once it was returned because, well, I was understandably nervous about doing so. But telling myself it had probably all been part of some kind of bigger glitch which had undoubtedly fried my Xbox, I plugged it in today. I saw I had tons of voice messages awaiting me when I logged on, my own voice playing back to me when I checked them, asking where I had gone, and then one that said they were coming to get me. My avatar waves back, but its gaze seems to be focused on something behind me.